Second, I'm going to turn on the camera, and I'm going to turn the blinds a little bit. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
Hi. Well, thank you for joining us for interviewing for our plans examiner position with the City of Monterey. My name's Lori Williamson. I'm the building official here for the City of Monterey. And I've asked a couple of gentlemen to join me on our interview panel. We have Michael Loomis, who's Director of Structural Engineering with Bourne Leaf. And we also have Paul He's was our senior inspector, and he has since retired from the City of Monterey after like 33 years working in the department. So there is some longevity here in the city, and he now also works for Fort Lee as a consultant. Today's questions, we do have some prepared questions that we'll be asking all the candidates, although this is a little less formal. It's a departmental interview, so we may ask questions based on individual items we see in your resume or your application. We may ask follow-up questions based upon some of your answers. You're able to ask us questions. This is kind of a two-way dialogue. So just wanted to kind of lay that out as a less formal process. And with that, we'll take turns asking the questions. And I'm going to ask Michael to start off with our first question. Michael Loomis, to start off asking the questions of you, Michael. So,
Just real quick, can you all hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, okay. I'm outside, so there's some background. Okay. So, first question. This position may involve a combination of office work and field work. The plans examiner should have a high level of code knowledge and be able to answer questions at the counter, as well as cover for the building inspectors when needed, in addition to performing plan reviews. Please tell us about your education and overall experience as it relates to this position.
Okay, I've been a structural engineer for 25 plus years, licensed as a structural engineer in California, have a master's degree in structural engineering. I've designed and reviewed all sorts of buildings, all the materials, steel, wood, concrete, masonry, every building type from high rise to low rise and everything in between. So, 1/4 of my career has been in the review capacity, so it's municipalities and other companies that ask for, to be sure that their plans comply with the code. That's part of it, and then the rest of it's been, designing all sorts of buildings and all sorts of structures, whether it's bridges, tenant improvements, seismic upgrades. I could go on and on and on, but this would take probably the whole time, and I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to.
Can you, to an extent, just explain the other than structural, what that code review is?
Most of mine has been that. I've done a couple of years with the non-structural. Usually, it's accessibility. I have done none with the MEP systems. A little bit with the green systems. Most of mine have been, you know, structural with a little bit of the TIs, which is figuring out the size of the buildings, fire, determining access, exits, fire, life safety, things like that. So, and I have a plans examiner certification as well. So that's pretty much done. I don't have a CASP, so that's something I'm going to have to get, but just haven't had the time for it because I've been busy doing the structural engineering stuff. That's basically what I get called for these days.
Okay.
So my question is, what was the last building or code related training you attended? What certifications do you have, and what certifications do you hope to obtain next?
Okay, we're talking. I have a structural engineering license in California. I thought I mentioned it. I also mentioned I had a California building plans examiner certification. I have a master's degree in structural engineering, and I'm doing continuing education in structural engineering. So I've been taking classes for about 2-3 years because of all the new structural systems that weren't around when I graduated from college are around now. So I wanted to be sure I was up to date on those. You know, before 2000, for example, cross-laminated timber wasn't thought of. So I decided to take a class on it because that's the new thing that all the architects and engineers are doing these days. So, and it's not one you can just read out of a book. That's just me.
So, Michael, what was the last training you recall attending?
The most recent thing, I'm actually doing that right now. It's classes about, this is soil structural interaction. So it's a 13-week class. I'm doing another one, I did one with cross-laminated timber, a 13-week class. Let's see. Performance-based design of buildings. Let's see. It's a whole bunch, and they do qualify for the ICC experience.
So, I'm going to jump in and ask a side question here. With all your experience in structural engineering over all these years, what is it that's drawing you to say, it seems like this is a little bit of a career shift into the role of a plans examiner. What is the motivation or interest that has that direction?
Okay, for me it's a little more stability. I'm tired of going, every 6 or 8 months. It's hard with a family going from, different urban area to different urban area. And I'm also tired of, I did some good work, on my own, but I'm just sick of chasing, being the bill collector. So I want something that's a little more stable, Self-employment's good, but you gotta, you only have a month gap waiting for something that's gonna happen, That, to me, isn't good, and I just want to stay home. I don't want to go moving around all the time. It's real difficult with a family, and I've had to sacrifice a lot the past 12 years.
And you'd be up for a move to, Monterey is a new location. Would you want to be relocating to the area then?
Possibly, yes. I'm in San Jose, so it's a little over an hour away. What I've done in the past before, when I've been in different locations, is I've been down, 4 or 5 days a week, and then come back to the Bay Area. One time I worked in Los Angeles. That's what I did. I was down in LA 10 days and came back to the Bay Area 4 days. And I stayed in a hotel, for the 10 days, so I had plenty to do.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to dive back into our regularly scheduled questions. And thank you for that explanation there and just kind of giving us some context in your interest in the position. So this next question is situational. Basically, this is kind of the projects that we see from time to time. This would be, say, an existing building, 3 stories. It's commercial, and they want to convert the 2 upper floors to residential. And looking for you to describe your methodology of how you would, look at these plans and how would you begin your review process.
Okay. Well, first we got to make sure everything's available. Everything's been included with plans, calcs, the other documents, and the plans themselves. Every sheet's there. That's the key thing. And then what I do, and if it's something missing, I let the applicant know and give them a chance to submit it. Maybe they forgot to submit it. I just don't know what's going on. It could be paper. It could be electronic. I prefer electronic for something like this because it's easier for me to review it. I can measure stuff on the computer screen. Checking to be sure I can open the file. That's an important one. And then the next thing I would do is look at the plans now for, what I do is the for the fire life safety, basically, checking to see whether the building has certain allowable, what they can do with the building, allowable areas, things like that. What type of the building is it? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And then I would check for things such as mezzanines too. They could put mezzanines in this commercial building. I don't know. In this case, I'm going to say no because you didn't tell me that there were mezzanines in the building. So then I would check to be sure we have things such as the number of exits and things like that. And then the next thing I check is the structural as well. And this would have to be whether it's existing building code, historic building code, or if they're designing it like a new building. There's, for example, keeping the exterior walls, for historic reasons. Some places do that. It could be a planning requirement. So then I would check to, I think California existing building code says if you're changing the occupancy, that requires a seismic upgrade. So I would compare the loads, what was there before and what's there now, do a comparison of it. Also, what code was enacted at the time the building was available versus what it is now. And then I would check to be sure that, what's being changed, the gravity system or the lateral system. Obviously, if it's a commercial space and I think it's 50 or 60 PSF and they're doing residential, which is 40, obviously the gravity system wouldn't need to be upgraded necessarily. But, it depends what they do inside the building with load paths, lateral or gravity. So, for example, in the residential, what if they take out a bunch of columns or put a bunch of walls in? You got to be sure that, I call it the pottery barn. You break it, you bought it. So things like that have to be, checked for the lateral system, the gravity system has to be checked. And also I would check to see how it compares to the existing building, because some engineers will cut holes in walls and things like that. And I've seen them do this where they forget that they cut into a bearing wall or a shear wall. What do we do about it? So I would look for details and, and be sure that those details match, or call out properly on the plans, and check to be sure all the material properties and things like that are specified. I could go on and on and on. Is that enough?
Yeah, no, that's a good approach. Thank you.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Look for non-structural, Michael.
I thought I said that. Basically, I would check things for fire, life safety, and things like that. For example, are they cutting holes in the wall? It could be a firewall. We don't know. That's a big one. Could be against, where's the building located, the property lines, which obviously does stuff with, and then also the vertical and horizontal assemblies, the horizontal assemblies, if they're changing an occupancy, what if you need a fire separation? And then also could load the building, because now you've added more drywall on top of it and somebody's having difficulty. And nice background, by the way, Mike Loomis. Is this, yeah, is this in, is it 17 Mile Highway? One of the houses on 17 Mile?
It sure looks like I'm sure it's just a random one, but behind me is a roller coaster. I'm at Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk.
Oh, cool.
I can sit at the meeting I'm at, so it might be more festive if I turn off my background.
Sorry you didn't go to UC Santa Cruz. Get on the internet.
There's a meeting down the street, and it's the only nice, comfortable place to sit.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh no, my turn. This is a short one. When does a plan require the stamp of a California licensed architect or engineer?
Okay, architect, and it's the building authority sheet. If it's the California architect, I think it's single family homes. And then if it's the engineer, it's whether they're changing something structural. It's everything. Everything. It should be their expertise, but it has to be everything except schools, hospitals, and California's talking about changing certain building types. I don't know what. I haven't looked it up lately. I know. I'll give you an example. Washington State, for example, if you're designing those 8-story podium structures, that would be a Washington SE. That's an example. And I tell people, check the state to figure out what's stamped. But I'm just speaking for California. An SE can stamp everything. But a professional engineer can stamp everything but schools and hospitals. And also could depend on the municipality, too.
Did I hear you say that a single-family dwelling requires an architect?
It does, depending on what it is. If they're doing a home renovation or something like that. But I always recommend to get a structural engineer on hand because you could be cutting holes in bearing walls and things like that. That's really up to the building department. If I see it, I'm going to tell somebody, yes, you need an engineer. Go get one and tell them why. You cut a hole in the wall. You need an engineer, and I'm not going to design it for you, because that could get into some big legal issues. Because cities get into issues if they design something and then it doesn't work. They get in big trouble, and then the city attorney gets mad at you because you designed something that's not in your expertise. I've seen that.
Describe your knowledge regarding accessibility requirements and how would you incorporate them into a plan review?
Okay, accessibility requirements are it's 20% of the value of the assessed value of all the improvements you're doing, and they would be things that allow people to be with wheelchairs to be accessible. So it could be things like fixing toilets, proper heights, grab bars, ramps to get in and out of the building, things like that. And then the other thing I would do, things like that. It has to be, depending on the building, it could be accessible travel. The wheelchair person has to get out. There have to be things, like, for example, a refuge area if it's like in a, upper story of a building, because handicapped people can't walk down the stairs, obviously, or can't go in elevators when there's a fire. And then the other thing I would do, too, before I have them do it, I would look up to see what improvements have been made. And if some of them can't be done, then they would have to fill out a form. It's called the non, I think it's called the infeasibility form. Don't quote me on it because I haven't done one of these in a while. But basically, putting it in paperwork, we can't do it without significantly altering the building. As a structural engineer, of course, I can figure out what to do. But it really is what's been specified on the plans, with approval from me, of course, what they're going to be doing to the building. If they're doing a tenant improvement in the building and, they're, being asked to, cut a column, obviously they're going to need an engineer, but we can also put it in paperwork, we can't do it, so, and have them do other improvements.
All right, thank you. Next question is another situational question. Let's say you've completed 2 rounds of plan reviews for a residential addition and remodel. The plans are submitted for a 3rd time, and you can see that it's still going to be, incomplete. Would you handle this review any differently than the previous 2, and if so, how?
It depends what it is. I'd have to look at the situation. If it's somebody that's not doing their job, apparently, yes, I would have to kick it out and tell them, you got to resubmit it. Depending on the cities, some of them charge extra plan review fees, so after the 3rd review, I don't know what Monterey is, I can't speak to them, depends on your city. Tell them you're going to be charged a fee. I would notify the owner also, and the engineer, and all the parties involved, and the contractor, this is what's going on, this is why you're not getting a permit. And what I found in the past, what's happened is nobody's telling the whole story. When the architect or engineer goes to the owner and says the city's being mean to me, when you send the evidence directly, what I found is, the owner gets really upset, that somebody's not doing their job. That's how I would handle it if somebody doesn't know what they're doing. If they, for example, don't know a professional, I would tell them what type of professional to look for. I would emphasize, I'm not recommending a professional specifically. Okay? If you want to look, in the building department records to see who has done one, I'll help you do that. That has done that type, I'll do that. And work with that person, and tell them what to look for. Because you don't want to, for example, hire an engineer that designed concrete to design a wood building, for example, like in these single-family homes. You don't want to do that. I'm just asking for trouble. Or if they don't know something, if it's a concept they don't know, I would explain it to them as well. Like, for example, in this renovation, if they're putting a big window, I would explain to them what a moment frame is and tell them show them what they got to do. Show them, for example, a Simpson moment frame product. This is one that we use. It's local company. You can call them. Here's the phone number. If they don't know something, I would give them some of the basic information I have and tell them, I'm not designing it for you. I have the basic information. If you have questions, you can ask. But you need the basic information first. That's a start for any problem. Because I don't know what I'm dealing with. I've dealt with engineers that have, for example, never designed a masonry wall. So if it's obvious, I will call them up and ask them, have you designed a masonry wall? They say no. Okay, here's the code section. This is what you do. You have to do it. You have to seal it. I can't do it for you. But the information's here. If you have questions, you can ask. And tell them where in the code it specifically tells them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mine now?
Yes, mine.
Please describe your experience with performing field inspections. Would you feel comfortable doing inspections, and to what level of complexity?
Yeah, okay. I've done a lot of field inspections. For me, they're called structural observations, being sure what the engineer has done according to plan. So I've done plenty of those. I have to do these on self-story retrofits when I was doing those, because a lot of times when I was doing those in San Francisco, what's on the building plans isn't there. So I would have to go out in the field and ask questions. answer questions for the contractor. If it's sometimes I will tell them what to do. Other times I will tell them I would have to get back and look at it and tell them this is going to take a while. Give them a timeline, not an exact timeline. Just say this is going to take a while. If it's non-structural, I've done some like firewalls and things like that, and building types. So I feel a little comfortable with that. It's just the structural engineering stuff I feel very comfortable with. And also its interaction with the non-structural systems. That's really important. For example, you don't want a ceiling to be accidentally connected to the gravity system. So when the ceiling moves around, you don't want it to damage the column and the whole building collapses. That's not the way that, that's not what it's supposed to do. And of course, I'm open to getting more training on this, obviously, some more of the certifications, the inspector certifications. I don't feel comfortable with the MEP systems. I just don't know anything about them. I can tell you if they're anchored safely. The ducts or the equipment that's anchored up there, that I could tell you.
All right, thank you.
So my next question is, as of January 1st, 2023, the state has adopted the newest round of building codes, the 2022 editions. What are some of the code changes that you are aware of in the latest code cycle? And are you aware of any mid-cycle changes that are pending July 1st, 2024?
I haven't been paying attention to the non-structural, so most of mine have been the structural aspects of the building plan. So they've added, I know for a fact, they've added a, type 4 A, B, and C, which the cross-laminated timber buildings, that's a big, big deal. Especially the architects love them because they like the way they look, and also office workers love them because they feel more relaxed in them. Let's see. And that's depending on some of the regions, some of the seismic coefficients of seismic I don't know if they're coefficients or what they are. They've changed. Some SS's and S1s depending on where you're located. Let's see. And that's all I'm aware of right now. Just I've been studying the other stuff with the Canadian codes. That's what I've been doing the night school for. So that wouldn't apply to those. That's something I'm going to have to look up. It's not something I know off the top of my head because I'm just buried in the structural stuff. A majority of it. Most of it has not changed.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Well, thank you. Yes. So shifting gears a little bit more towards counter work. What techniques do you use at the building counter to help, say, a frustrated owner builder or say a designer with poor plans to understand the requirements to get a building permit?
The best way for me personally is to show them what a good set looks like. That's important. I just don't like telling them. What I would do in that situation is show an example of ones I've done and show ones that have been approved and tell them you're going to do this too. If you have questions, you can come and ask. I would ask a lot of questions of that person because it's either they don't want to do it or they're unable to do it. They just don't know how to do it. So I would ask a lot of questions on it. I keep focusing on the applicant. If it's something I don't know, I'm going to get that person that has the experience to help them. And I would tell them, I can't help you. I can tell you somebody that can. And I keep the customer informed. If it's something that's going to take a while, if I have to look it up, I will tell them, this is going to take a while. Go get a cup of coffee, get something to eat, come back. So what I do is try to work with them, and what I like to do, if they're coming in with a big question, I like to have somebody tell me ahead of time, so I have all the information ready when they come in. That helps a lot because I get to ask a lot of questions, and then we do it in one shot. It helps me prepare, but it helps the applicant so that they have somebody that knows what they're talking about. I would use technology, a lot of the link monitors would be a good use of the technology.
Yes, we try and do that a lot, actually. I know if someone has a question for me, I want to know what's the question ahead of time, what project is it associated with, and just so I can, do some research and be able to answer them.
Now, do you note those in the system as well? So when they come in later, I tell people email's the best way. The reason is because there's a record of it. It's easy to search. When you say something, when you're talking about something and don't write it down, you don't remember everything. For example.
So,
And one technique I use, and I'll use this as an example, when I go out on site inspections, I have my iPhone, I talk and record when I'm doing it. And the reason I do it is so I can go back and remember what I did. It's hard to write stuff down when you're on the roof, but when you're talking into the iPhone like this, it's real easy. And also you can upload it, And I like to give it to the other person, so there's a record of it. We both talked about it, so there's no misunderstandings. That's really important when you're to me. If you admit a mistake, also you can it takes a lot of the stress off people. And one of the things I do as to a customer, if it's something I don't like enforcing, I tell them, I did not come up with this. If you want to do something about it, call the building official or whoever. Do this. I can't do anything about it. I wish I could, but I can't. So part of it also is making people feel like they're not helpless. Because when they feel like they don't have can't do anything, they feel powerless. I've seen them in my professional life, they get a little upset. And that's not good for anybody.
I do like that idea. I mean, we do try to do as much via email as possible. We also have places in our software to keep logs and notes of conversations. So maybe not incredibly detailed information, but certainly kind of help trigger our memory of what the issue was and what we had decided.
Yeah, it's just no way to keep track of everything. And I don't know about Monterey, probably it would be difficult because there's a lot of low-rise buildings. It would be hard to remember them, whereas like a big city like San Francisco, it's easy to remember, the 40 high-rise buildings. There's only fewer of them. With Monterey, you can't do that as easily because everything's low-rise. I don't have a problem with that, It makes it harder to remember certain buildings, especially because low-rise buildings tend to be wood. You don't see a lot of steel or a lot of concrete unless it's a big building in plan. So it makes it harder to remember the buildings. So what I do is I try to remember the big ones, and I have copies of the plans. If it's, for example, a mall or an office that gets renovated a lot, like in your neck of the woods, it would be Del Monte Center. I'm using it as an example. We would have the plans there for the TI. And one of the things I would do over the counter is have them call so we can get copies of the plans. And a lot of people don't know this, and I've had to teach people this. You have 30 days to get request the engineer to get a copy of the plan. So I tell people, you have to get that paperwork started. You can come in, look at the plans, but you can't make a copy unless you have permission. Here's the form you got to fill out. And if it's a request, some cities do it with a city clerk. I don't know what Monterey is. I can't speak to them, but a lot of them do the city clerk. There's a record of it. Every FOIA request, there's a record of it. And it also helps so, others can get a hold of it. And what I typically do is a lot of building departments now don't let you come in. You have to go online. So what I tell people is go online, see if they have it. Like City of Los Angeles is a good example where they list the buildings. They don't have the plans themselves because it's against the law in California. But they'll tell you when it is and what building to request. And it's easy to narrow it down instead of having a big volume of records because, and I don't know about your city, but in LA, it costs, I think it's 20 cents a sheet or something like that. So, and one thing I would allow, if I come on board, I wish the cities would do this, is to at least have the title sheet so you could photograph it and remember what it is and have the record number written somewhere. So you know what you're requesting and you don't have to go through the whole thing. It's easier to know what you're requesting instead of, I bumped into one recently in Portland, Oregon, where in the Portland area where they, said we have the plans, and we found out later that the county had them instead. And my client kept saying, well, call the engineer, get them from him. Well, in California, the law for retention is 7 years. Not everybody's going to keep the plans, because by law, you can throw them out. Me personally, anything I design, most of the things I've designed, I keep copies of it. Before PDFs came about, I didn't keep a lot of them, because it's paper and it's a lot of room. PDFs weren't thought of yet.
We have a similar process with our city clerk's office, which is next door, and we work very closely together for those information requests. All right.
Okay.
We're on Michael.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay, this one's a two-parter. So we'll start with part one, situational question. After reviewing a set of plans, the architect challenges your interpretation of code section and raises the issue to the building official. The building official consults with you, and the two of you discuss the matter at length. But ultimately, the building official makes a different interpretation than you would, and you do not agree with it. What would you do?
Okay, it depends what it is. If it's a structural issue, that would be me. The building official, depending if they're licensed as a structural engineer, it would have to be deferred to me unless it's something I don't know anything about. I know pretty much about a lot of the structural systems. If it's not structural, I would defer to the building official. If it could be something that they're going to waive. Okay, fine, put it in writing. That you're waiving it, and it's got to be on the plans. And the reason I say that is so that an inspector doesn't do it and then call the building department, and stop the job. And that's not fun for an owner or a contractor or anybody, when their job is stopped. So it depends what it is. And if it's, I'll give you an example. If it's MEP stuff, if it's ducts and things like that, I defer to, the building official or the person with the expertise. There's just too much to risk because I know nothing about it. I just couldn't do it, unless I was properly trained. So my answer is it depends.
What if you were both structural engineers and you still disagree?
Okay, I'll give an example of that. One was a car dealership. They, I let that one go. That was the type of analysis they were doing. One, I thought it was going to be structural and dynamic analysis. The other one wasn't dynamic The other engineer thought that. We talked about it. And he showed me where in the code it says you can use either or. There's nothing they can do about it. I let the applicant know and said, you can do it. Just put it on the plans. Because every, structural engineering, all it does, the code does, is it tells you the minimum. It doesn't tell you, about statics, are you going to design a, two simple spans or, a continuous two-span beam or two separate single spans. That's something the engineer has to specify. I can't go and say which one.
Okay, part B, how would you correct an inspector during a staff meeting that has misstated or misunderstood a code section and has been applying it incorrectly in the field?
I would tell him about it and where it is in the code so that he knows. And I would have a copy of the code handy, electronic or otherwise, and put it up there. And, give him an example. I like using examples. Give an example of this and explain why, the code section is what it is. I would give that inspector, where he got that from. Could be something he learned, or maybe it's a misinterpretation. I don't know. So I want to hear his side of it too. It could be he's interpreting the wrong section. I want to see how he's thinking, that inspector's thinking first. Maybe the inspector doesn't have expertise in the area of inspection. For example, what if the inspector looked at wood buildings and was inspecting a seal moment frame incorrectly? So I would tell that inspector if he doesn't know anything, he better call me, and I would offer to go out with him and show what he's looking at, and take pictures.
Aside from basic knowledge of the code, describe the characteristics of a successful plans examiner.
A successful plans examiner has to be knowledgeable, has to have the knowledge to enforce the code, but also be allowed to deviate a little bit. When I say deviate, that's basically because not everything's cut and dry. To have knowledge of the California Building Code, when to apply it, whether it's an existing, and also have knowledge of the materials, whether it's for fire reasons or, for structural reasons. For example, and I believe they need to know all the building types, and I'll be honest to say, I don't know it all, I gave that up a long time ago, trying to figure out all the building types, and all you can do is learn about it, but also have a continuous level of learning all these material types, and also to go where, I tell people, go where the building stock is different, go look at it, ask questions, you provide, for me, part of being successful is providing an example of what you're doing and what you're not doing. And also being resourceful and telling them where to get the information, and I've seen people that are shocked when they find out, they're specifying something incorrectly, and I remind them, yeah, it's a local California company that makes this, here it is. And they're stunned when they find out, that it's not only doing it wrong, but it's a local product. And if it's a local product, I expect them to know a little more about it because somebody told me a long time ago that local company, you want to find out what companies are paying money for taxes. Where are they? What they do. Especially in a city where you live, you should know what those are. Any good person, a citizen would know that because I get asked, and I'm not saying the ins and outs, how it's manufactured. Say, I'll give you an example. I'm trying to think of a Monterey example. Well, not Monterey, like Monterey pasta. They make the pasta, for example. Here it is. Let's see, Monterey. They would know. Let's see, for companies. I'm trying to think of companies that are located in Monterey. I don't think that. Let's see. I don't know off the top of my head. One would be the military school. If they want to see what an old structure looks like, I would tell them to go in town. Go look at this building.
Right. So that concludes the questions that we have scripted. Are there any questions that you would have for us? Anything you would like to know about our division or City of Monterey or just relative to the position?
Oh, I have quite a few questions actually. Number one, why is the position available?
Yes, we have a one full-time in-house position, and our prior plans examiner retired. She was a licensed architect, had like 20-something certifications, was very, very knowledgeable. But she retired at the end of December, and so that's why the position is available.
Okay, and what's the typical rate? I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this. The arrangement, in terms of like, does the city get a lot of single family homes, a lot of like small businesses? What do they get typically? And I know there's probably height restrictions over there, probably, which I don't have a problem with because you don't want to have a 25-story building in the middle, sticking out like a sore thumb around a bunch of houses, casting shadows.
Yeah. Generally, Monterey doesn't have very many buildings over 4 stories, although my understanding is that with the state's push for, more affordable housing, that in some areas downtown they've extended that height limit to something like 7 stories. Most of the work that we get is smaller. It's remodels, it's ADUs, it's conversion of commercial space to residential. Again, the push with the state trying to develop more affordable housing. Also, we have an issue with the water moratorium. So if a particular property doesn't have enough water credits to expand, then they're limited in what they can do by the fact that they can't add bathrooms or laundry rooms or additional fixtures. So that may be nearing the end. It's been a long time coming, but the local area has been working on alternative water sources, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2 or 3 years that starts transitioning to opening up water credits for more development. And that could end up resulting in a lot of new home construction in Monterey or multifamily type scenarios.
Yeah, I think.
Land.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see more of it because I don't know if you've been seeing the weather where we're getting a lot of places, people getting sick of their air conditioning, so they're going to want to come where there's fog and stuff because it's cheaper on the where I live here in San Jose. When it's hot, I go to the coast. So people live on the coast because it's cooler. Yes, they save a lot of money on the energy and stuff. Because it's an expression I have a long time ago. When it's hot out, when it's cold out, you can put on a sweater. But when it's hot out, it's hard to cool down. Because now you've taxed the electric grid. And especially with PG&E, which is raising rates like crazy,
Yes. Yes, I'm familiar. I moved here from the Central Valley, so I'm familiar with hot.
What part of the Central Valley?
Shafter, California. It's
Yep.
near Bakersfield.
Okay, I know where that. Yeah, we were talking about that. Because Palm. I don't know if you've heard of that company, the wonderful company.
Oh yeah, I know Palm. I know some people that work there.
Yeah, that's how I know that company. widely known
Yes. Yeah.
because they're talking about putting more warehouses there.
Yes, his shelter has lots. I actually personally have inspected many large tilt-up concrete warehouse structures there in Shafter. That's kind of their thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what's the next step in the process after today?
Yeah, so we will complete our interviews on department level. That's what this is with the candidates, and then probably get back to them shortly with the determinations. So that could be within a week, might be a couple weeks, but in that time frame. And at that point, we would be making offers.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, folks, and have a good weekend. You just froze.
Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Bye.